What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of A Merry Zulu Sabo 9. Yo, it's just me today, but I wanted to come on this morning and talk about why I moved to Africa, how I moved to Africa, and if that's your choice, well, any place you decide to go outside of the U.S., how you can do it too. Okay? Stay locked. We're going to get into some details. I'm going to tell you just how to get this done and be successful. Let's go. All right, so I took some notes. So if you see me looking at my phone, hey, I'm trying to make sure I get this down for you. I'm still going to miss some stuff. That's just how it goes. But hit me up in the comments. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share, hit the button, turn on your notifications. Make sure that you can catch us when we drop a new episode. We're going to try to be as consistent as possible with giving you guys these episodes. Okay, so let's get down to business. How to make the move. The first thing you want to do is decide. Okay, what do you mean decide, Chris? Decide that you're about to make a change. Decide that you're not scared to make a change. Decide that you're going to make this change like your life depends on it. Decide that you have the faith to be able to overcome any obstacles, not any, the obstacles that will arise as you go through this process. So you got to make it up in your mind that this is something I want to do. This is something that will change my life. This is something that my heart desires. This is something that my spirit desires. This is something that I feel inside of me, that I know inside of me is the next path for me, right? And so let's get to my why. And that was my why, right? I decided that maybe 3 to 4 years ago that, I was just kind of done with the US. I could kind of see the tides changing. When COVID hit, that was like an eye-opening season. So much happened during COVID that we'll save for another day, but that period of time is when my mind started to change and realize that, wait a minute, there's more outside of what we've seen. There's more outside of what we know, and we deserve to see it. And something that a lot of my US friends may not understand is the value of that blue book that you have. Right? And when you know the value of that blue book, that passport that you have, it makes it a lot easier to start deciding. That's what we're talking about. Make a decision. It makes it easier to start deciding, it's time. I want this. I'm going to do this. So for me, it was, okay, I want to go, but where? I hadn't traveled outside the U.S. I've traveled around the States. I've made big moves from state to state, Chicago to Phoenix, from Phoenix to Wisconsin. Like, I moved around the States, right? But I hadn't been out the country. So the first thing I would tell a person to do after they decide, you've made that decision, you've prayed about it, pray about it, pray about it, pray about it. I'm a God man. I don't want to make this about religion or what you believe or what you don't believe. Whatever power it is that you believe in, you've got to have total faith that it's going to work out, right? So I decided, okay, I'm going to start taking some trips, right? Start a little close, I made my first trip out the country and I realized like, this is doable. I can do this, right? And then you start to realize how far your money goes. I was convinced in my mind that before I decided on Africa, I was convinced in my mind that I was going to live in Thailand. And I had places picked out. I'm doing all the YouTube videos. I'm online researching. I'm filling myself with as much knowledge as I can about the move to Thailand. And as you can see, a lot of people, this was 3 years ago. Now, there's a lot of people, on the Thailand thing, but I needed to go and get that experience, right? And so I planned my trip to Thailand, and let me say, Thailand is one of the most beautiful places in the world. Like, Thailand is beautiful. The people are nice. The people are friendly. It's safe. You could be out 2, 3 in the morning. Nobody's bothering you. Like, it was the first time that I didn't feel discriminated against anywhere. It was the first time I went on a trip and didn't feel discriminated against or judged, or, like they always say about Thailand and Thai people, you may get some stares, you may get some silly questions, but nobody's treating you poorly because of the color of your skin. And for my Black Americans, that's a rare occurrence. You don't really see or get to experience that. You don't really get to experience not feeling Black somewhere, just feeling like a human. So Thailand was the first place that I actually felt like a human. Like, man, I can just be free and I can just go. And, that was that experience that I needed to further encourage my growth in traveling, right? To further encourage my belief, my decision that I could do it. And so, that was that eye-opening experience. But the kicker was traveling in places solo, especially, can be a very lonely thing. And not that you always need people or that, you can't do it by yourself, but you do need those genuine connections. You do need to be able to have, you can be in Thailand for 2 months and not have a full heart-to-heart conversation. And that's no fault of the Thai people, right? The language barrier, right? It's hard to establish those connections with such a large language barrier. And so the reason I'm telling that story is because one of the biggest things that you want to do when you're making this decision is find out where your comfort level is. And the only way to find out where your comfort level is, where you feel at peace, where you can make those connections that, we long for, is to go those places and experience the culture, experience the lifestyle. You've got to stay more than a week in it. You've got to stay more than a week, because there is a such thing as like that honeymoon phase of a place that you go, right? It's one thing to be in a place as a visitor, as a tourist, having fun and hitting all the sites and going to Fifi Islands and doing all this stuff, right? And then there's another thing between living that daily life, that regular routine, living overseas, right? There's a difference between being a tourist in a place and a resident in a place, right? Same thing in the States, right? You could I'm from Chicago, so you can go to Chicago and Chicago's a beautiful place, which it is. And I had so much fun and I did this and I did that. That may be a different lifestyle. That may be you may have a different feeling when you live there for 6 months, right? And so same thing with overseas. You want to give yourself time to get past that honeymoon phase, to get past that stage of excitement, to really settle in and see what fits you, see what makes you comfortable, see how you're able to connect and operate as a person, as an individual. And so when I went to Thailand, that was something I realized. I love this place. I could be in this place. I could definitely see myself here. The USD goes far. If you know anything about Thailand, like you could live like a king for, reasonable money. For what we pay for rent, you could live your whole life in a month, right? No problem in Thailand. That's just because of the currency rates, right? That's that way. But what I was missing was that connection, right? We're traveling outside of the States because we're lacking that. We're traveling outside of the States because we're looking for more. We're traveling outside of the States because we're trying to find that meaning, that purpose. Not everybody is traveling just to party, just to, hit clubs. Not everybody who goes to Colombia or goes to Rio de Janeiro or goes to, these South American companies are going there just for girls or just for, a lot of people are making these moves because their soul needs it. Let's be honest, right? And so I couldn't get that settle in feeling there, and then I'm a super picky eater. And so spicy food was killing me. So many things, right? It just wasn't the place for me, right? And so I had never been to Africa. And so I made a decision, again, another decision that I was going to take a trip to Africa, and I was going to visit as many countries as I could in a month, right? And so I started in Nairobi, and then I went to Johannesburg, and then I ended up coming to Durban, KZN, and completely changed my life, right? And so once I had made that decision, like, okay, I want to live in Africa. I want to live in Africa. You know, I got here and I just felt peace. I just felt comfort. I felt calm. I was able to relate, you know. It was beautiful to just be able to blend in. Every place has its struggles. Every place has its ups, its downs, its ins, its outs. You know, we can see through the fog, right? If you travel enough places, right, you can always see behind the veil, right? I can always see what's really going on behind the scenes, right? I can always see where there's trouble. I can always see the inequality. I can always see those things, right? But that's going to be anywhere you go. You're going to have to overcome something. And so I wanted to be able to overcome it where I chose. So I made that decision like, okay, this is the place I want to move, right? I had met my wife, and things just progressed, and it just turned into a beautiful thing. So we talked about making a decision. Make a decision that this is what you're going to do, and an unwavering decision that this is what you're going to do. The next step is going to be the biggest step you can do in making a move like this is to plan. Plan. I don't care what you see on YouTube. I don't care what you see from friends, you cannot just pack up your life and bounce. It takes a plan to sustain it. Again, if you want to take a 2-week vacation, if you're just gonna run away from life for a month, you probably can do it, or even a couple months, depending on how much income you have, right? But if you plan on staying in a place, you have to plan. What I did was I created a spreadsheet. I don't know if you're good at Excel or Google Sheets, whatever you use, even if it's a Word document. Detail and write out everything you're gonna need to make this trip work, right? Some of the things I planned was flights, housing, food, expenses, incidentals, ongoing income, and also planning at least 3 months of expenses of these expenses that I listed. If you can, 3 months, have that saved up. And then learning and applying the visa requirements for wherever you want to go, right? And then before this is over, I'll get into what the pricing was for some of these things and what the prices look like in South Africa, at least for food, housing, incidentals, things like that. I created this spreadsheet with all of the expenses that I would need to cover, right? And then I started to do my research. Do your research on flights. Don't just get online and book the first flight you see, right? Sometimes you might have to book 2 one-way tickets to make it more affordable. The next thing you want to do is visit the places that you want to go to. Like we just talked about, right? You don't want to choose a place based off that honeymoon phase. Visit more than once. Visit more than twice if you can. Before I moved to South Africa, I came here 3 or 4 times, right? Just to make sure, this is the place for me. Just to make sure, okay, this is the area I want to live in. Just to make sure this is the province that I want to live in, right? Like I said, I started in Nairobi. I knew that I would choose one of these. Nairobi, Johannesburg, Cape Town. Right? I didn't even know about Durban, right? I ended up finding out about Durban a little later and loved it, but I had a plan that I would visit these 3 places, and then within those 3 places, I would try and sort out where exactly I wanted to stay. What I will say is, if you can afford it, right, I would choose to initially, when you land in a place, stay in a populated area. Stay in a place where you can't have some of the amenities that you're used to. Your dollar is going further, so you can't afford it. You know, stay in a place where things are close to you, where you can find your way, and that gives you a time to settle into a place, right? To start asking questions, to start meeting people, to start figuring out, you know, how far outside of the city or into the city you want to go. It just narrows down exactly what you want to do, right? That's the second one. Meet people, right? When you're going these places, it's really easy to either get caught up in the bar lifestyle, the girl lifestyle, or the isolated, I'm just a solo traveler. You know, as an introvert, extrovert, right, it can be hard for me to meet people, right? So you have to push yourself out of that comfort zone to be able to say, yo, okay, I'm gonna just go meet some people today. I'm gonna talk to people in the cab. I'm gonna talk to the cab driver. I'm gonna talk, create a network, which is another part of this. You got to explore and join groups. And YouTube, right? YouTube was probably one of the biggest resources that I used in navigating my move, right? Being able to, nobody is gonna show you everything on YouTube. So understand that you're only getting one person's perspective of what an area looks like, of what an area is like, of the time that they had, because everything is gonna be subjective. Everything is going to be based on your personality, your likes, even your budget is based on you and how you live your lifestyle, right? One thing I will say about traveling anywhere, the fastest way to end up in trouble are three things. And it doesn't matter if you're in Thailand, it doesn't matter if you're in South America, even in the States. Drugs, bars, and the service industry, we'll call it, right? Those three things always have some type of connection to trouble to it. I'm not saying don't go out and enjoy yourself. You know, I'm an adult. We all adults, right? You can drink, you can party, you can have a good time. These places are great for partying. But anything you do in excess is never good for you, right? And so even me, when I landed in certain countries, you know, I had a different mindset at sometimes, right? Where like, let's go get it. Let's have a good time. Let's party. I'm out here, you know, but that's that vacation mindset. Once you get serious about your plan and you get serious about making this move for your life, you start to see these places differently. You aren't seeking out the same things that you were seeking out for. You aren't looking for the same activities that you were looking for before. And these places have so much to offer outside of that, you know? And so if you can avoid those three, I'm not saying, you know, do what you do, but if you can avoid those three in excess, you can have a very, very, very successful time. Very successful time. And the fourth thing that you want to do is culture, right? Wherever you're going, you want to learn as much about the culture as you can, right? Here in South Africa, Zulu, big language that most people speak, right? I still haven't learned that. I got like 6 words down. I'm about 6. I'm about 6 words in to, you know, but the more you learn the native language in any country I found, the more respect that comes along with it. It seems that a lot of cultures appreciate the effort, right? I know that like, and I can only speak for Black American because I'm Black American, right? Sometimes in our culture, we can look at that as like culture vultures or, you know, like if you have a person who's outside of the race, Black American, speaking, acting, and carrying themselves as a Black American, we kind of shy away from it. That's a little bit different culturally across the globe. If you're in Thailand and you're learning Thai and you're speaking it terribly, but you're trying to use the facial expression, same thing with Zulu. If you're in South Africa and you know you're speaking bad Zulu, right? But you're trying, it seems that people are a little bit softer to you, you know. And it was hard for me to understand, you know, how difficult English was for so many people, right? Like you hear people speak English, so you automatically assume like, um, you speak in English, you can talk. Talk. Well, it's not that simple, and so it can get exhausting for somebody of the native tongue speaking to you in English, like, you know. And here's the thing, you know, here in South Africa, you know, Zulus, I've heard, you know, my wife is Zulu, but you know, they get exhausted speaking English to you. They be tired, like this guy, you know. And the problem with me is that I don't necessarily look African American, right? So if you see me walking in the store, if I walk up to a restaurant, if I go in, the assumption is that I'm Zulu. I'm walking in with a woman and I've got, like, it just seems that way. And so I had to learn how to take my offense and breed it into an understanding, right? Even when they are being offensive, even if somebody is a little irritated at the fact or whatever the case may be, right? I had to learn how to take that and turn that into understanding, right? The same way if I'm in the States and someone's coming to me and they're speaking Arabic, you know, so that was the thing. But moving here to South Africa, let's talk about that if that's your interest. I won't say it was easy to find a rental here in South Africa. And that's basically mostly because of the visa laws, right? A lot of landlords are leery of renting to you if you're on a tourist visa, you know, because that gives you 90 days, right? So if you're a U.S. citizen, you can legally be in South Africa for 90 days at a time. You can make a visa run, as they call, you know, go to Kenya for a day or two, or, you know, fly out of South Africa and come back and get a new 90 days. But that doesn't make it very advantageous for a real estate agent or a property owner to want to rent you a place. So it was difficult to find someone who was willing to work with my situation. Now, it helped me a tad bit because my wife lives here. She is a South African resident, and so she has ID, and, you know, we kind of had some paperwork to kind of back up our situation. But that's not the case for everybody, right? And so South Africa does have a digital nomad visa, specialty skills visa, spousal visas, relative visas, things like that. So there are visa options. But I would definitely suggest that you have that plan in order of what type of visa you're gonna have and start the process of trying to acquire it, if you can, before you even come, especially if you're planning on staying and renting a place. Let's talk about pricing on apartments. Depending on where you live, pricing can be super cheap or it can be kind of middle of the range. And so I think if you're staying in, we're just talking about South Africa. So I was in Joburg for a while. So if you want to live in Joburg and coming from America, I would say for monthly rent, you may need between 700 to 1200 USD for monthly rent. Now, let me say that with a grain of salt, because I know there's some people who are going to jump in the comments and say, I got a place for $350 a month, $400 a month, or, oh man, that's expensive, you know. But again, this channel is not for those people who are trying to live, and no disrespect, but it's not for those people who are trying to live like in hostels or in more of an urban environment. I'm making this trip and I'm traveling because I want to live an upgraded lifestyle for what I'm paying in the States. So if I'm going to pay that in the States, I would rather pay that here and get a lot more for my money and have it stretch further, right? So Johannesburg, I say between anywhere in South Africa, I think between $600 to $1,200 a month, depending on your lifestyle, depending on numbers of bedrooms, you can definitely find a place to stay. Got a plane coming overhead. But again, my number one tip on finding a place to rent in South Africa is to get a real estate agent. Don't do it by yourself. Your accent will either run some away or it will raise the cost. Let's just be honest. Your accent is either gonna run a realtor or property owner away, or it's going to, because of your visa and things like that, or it's going to raise the price. We've all heard of a foreigner tax, and I'm one of those people who I kind of believe that to like haggle and negotiate when we're using a USD in some situations could be like, it's tacky and it's kind of, I don't know. So if something costs a certain price and I'm negotiating and in USD, the price difference is $1. So I'm negotiating you from 18 Rand to 20 Rand. Like, what are we talking about in USD? And some people can call it wasteful and some, whatever. That's just me. I feel like we kind of do a disservice to some of these communities by haggling their prices when we know, truthfully, that the difference is 50 cents, the difference is $3, the difference is $5. That $5 goes a whole lot further for that family, for that business owner, than it ever could for you. And I think it's a good way to build relationships, to be honest. To just pay people what they ask. And if it's too high for you, it's too high for you. If you can't afford, you can't afford. But most things you should be able to if you're living this type of lifestyle. And so I would definitely say have a real estate agent, have somebody who can speak for you, tell you how many applications are in on a place, put in a good word with landlord owners and property owners to try and help you find something that's reasonable. Let's talk about Durban specifically. Durban is kind of known as like the vacation spot. December time, Durban is like where you want to be. And so when we moved to Durban, when I came to Durban, I knew I loved Durban. I knew I wanted to be in this area. But I knew that I wanted a certain type of lifestyle. I knew that I wanted something a little bit quieter. I knew that I wanted a certain level of safety. And I knew that, that would probably come at a premium. So if you're coming from the States and you're thinking about visiting or moving to Durban specifically, my suggestions would be to start in Umhlanga. We've got a video where we went and visited Umhlanga, walked around. Umhlanga is beautiful, and it's a great place to coast you into life outside of the U.S. There's a lot of American amenities. There's a lot of things that we're used to that you can get there, and the standard of living stays pretty consistent, right? You will pay a premium to stay in Umhlanga. You're not going to get the same bang for your buck that you would in Durban Central or some of the other areas. And let me caveat this very, very carefully. Durban can be very, 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 very dangerous. Anywhere in South Africa, as you probably heard, can be very, 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 very dangerous. But Chicago can be very, 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 very dangerous. Los Angeles can be very, 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 very dangerous. New York can be very, very, very dangerous. One thing I always tell people when coming out of the country, or even about Africa, is that when you're born in places like we're born in, when you're born in Chicago, you're from New York, you're from California, you're from these places, you have that spidey sense, and you know how not to make yourself a target, right? Knowing how to move, right? Thailand, that's a place where you can take your phone, you can be out, blah, blah, blah. Certain areas in South Africa, that's not what you want to do. You always have to be aware of your surroundings, no matter where you are. You always have to be diligent. You always have to have an exit plan. You always should have a way or a ride, or you should always protect yourself at all costs. When I land in a new place, one of the first things I do is I hit up a tactical shop. Or I'm gonna go to a smoke shop, usually having stuff like that. I'm gonna get a little knife, or I'm gonna get a little something, a little poke, something, just to feel like I have something on myself, right? Now, I know there's gonna be some people that say, who wants to do that? I can be doing that in the States, and that's your prerogative, right? I can't tell people how to live. What I can tell you is that you've got a lot more chances of something violent happening to you in the US than you ever would here. Now, I say that with a caveat. If you're hanging out in Kwamashu, if you're hanging out in Nanda, or if you're hanging out in the Cape Flats, or if you're in the CBD Joburg, or if you're in the CBD Durban, right? If you're out in these places late at night, drugs, women, bars, you're probably gonna find some trouble, right? Which is why I say, again, this channel is for those people who aren't looking for that life. This is for those people who want something different in life, right? We've done that. We've passed that. We've had those party experiences, right? Now we're looking for some solitude. Now we're looking for some peace in life. Now we're looking for those experiences. We're looking for something to fill the soul, right? And the last thing that I'm going to speak on is the most important, right? Income. How are you going to support yourself while you're here in South Africa? I work remotely, and so that enables me to, if I'm tired of South Africa, we can go to Thailand, we can go to South America, we can go to Jamaica, it allows me that freedom and that flexibility to be able to live and still get work done. There's a lot of people who travel that way. And let me just be clear, you don't have to make a ton of money to be able to do it, right? It's all about the plan that we talked about in the beginning, right? I watched a guy on YouTube not too long ago. He was working a Walmart customer service over the phone job, and he made his move out of the country, working his over the phone, and he was making like 17 an hour, 15 an hour. And he was able to sustain himself long enough to grow his page, to continue working, to make that move. But what he did was he made a decision that he was going to do it. He moved home and saved his money, right? And one thing I want to say is, don't expect to change your life without a sacrifice. Now, people are going to take that and go all crazy. What do you got to do? Listen, we're not talking about no crazy sacrifice stuff. But what are you willing to deny yourself? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing not to spend on? What are you willing to do to save every penny that you could? I decided I need to save every penny I can for at least 5 months, at least 6 months, to be able to, like I told you guys in the beginning, afford my expenses for at least 3 months, right? Because 3 months is my 90 days, right? That's my visa time. And 3 months of rent, or 3 months of 1 month of an Airbnb, take some time to find a place in a month. And then my first 2 months of rent, right? Because one thing you have to know is, when you're a foreigner and you're renting places outside of the country, a lot of times you're going to be charged a double deposit, right? And so if the rent is 1,000, and if the rent is 600, you're going, in South Africa that I found, you're going to have to pay a double deposit, right? So you got first month's rent, you got the double deposit. That's 3 months of rent off the top, right? So at a minimum, you need to have 3 months of expenses saved up. Right? Here's the beautiful thing about renting places outside of the country though. That rental usually, most times, can include you living in a furnished place. So the place that I moved into when I found a place through a real estate agent in a community was fully furnished, right? And when I say fully furnished, down to plates, spoons, Tupperware, everything you need to Wi-Fi, everything you need to get yourself going, right? That created such a opportunity for me to be able to save money while I was getting myself together. That allowed me the opportunity to save money to buy the things that I needed to set myself up properly, because I didn't have to worry about couches and furniture and TVs and plates and pans and ironing boards, and everything came fully furnished, right? And so you'll find that across Africa, that you can find beautiful, fully furnished places. I get so tired of the stigma that somehow because you're going to Africa, you're going to live in some demolished place, or you're going to live in some rundown shack, or you'll have a nice place but there's no hot water, or you gotta eat pig feet, or whatever stupidness they're talking about. I eat more steak and gourmet food here in Africa than I ever could afford to in the States. I experience more quality food options ever here than I could in the States. If me and my wife go out for let's say we both have sirloin steak, and she gets lobster and I get steak, and we have a bottle of wine, and I mean, that bill at the nicest restaurant might be, I don't know, 40, 50 bucks, maybe 60 bucks, right? And so that's the trade-off, activities. If I call, we have a car, but if I call an Uber, that Uber, most Uber rides for me for where I'm going, I mean, you might spend $3 or $4 for an Uber ride. I don't think I've ever, in Africa, anywhere, spent more than $20 on an Uber or a boat, as they hear. So you got Uber and you got boat. I've never spent more than 20 bucks on a ride. I don't care if it was 30 minutes away. I think we went from Johannesburg to Pretoria, and it might have cost us like that 20 bucks or something like that. So while I decided to pay more, right, for my living because of the area that I wanted to stay in, because of the community that I wanted to have, I also still get to reap the benefits on the back end, right? So just to give you guys, and I don't want to tell all my business, but to give you guys an idea of what I spend per month for everything. Now, let's just run this down. That I allocate for each individual thing that I'm going to do. So rent, electricity, my cell phone, monthly groceries, what else? Internet, and my leisure, like my extra money. Like, you want to go out to eat, I want to go buy some clothes, I want to take a flight to Joburg. That extra money that I have every month, I spend less than $2,000 a month. When I was back home in Phoenix, I was paying $2,500 a month just for rent. Just for rent. My rent was $2,500 a month. That didn't include electric. That didn't include water. That didn't include the landscaper. That didn't include my car note. That didn't include, my phone bill, right? My US phone plan is like $200 a month. Here I have a phone plan, and I don't even know if I pay $20 a month. I don't even think it's $20 a month that I pay. Everything's not sweet. Everything's not perfect. Everything won't go your way. But is it worse? Am I doing worse? I don't think so. I'm not making this video to try to convince anybody of anything. I'm not making this video to brag. I'm not making this video to be another influencer. I'm making this video simply to show people that it can be done. That if it's in your heart, if it's in your mind, if it's in your spirit to do it, it's possible. You have to plan, you have to decide, you have to plan, and then you have to educate yourself on what exactly it's going to take to make it happen. Do not listen to these YouTubers that's telling you that it's simple. Do not listen to these YouTubers who are telling you that they are living this lavish life with no problems and they float on cloud nine every day. That's not reality. That's not reality. is no different than we talk about with social media. People are showing you their highlights, right? That YouTuber is not showing you all the days he spends alone in his apartment because his family is 3,000 miles away. Can you handle that? You have to think about these things. Can you handle missing holidays? Can you handle missing birthdays? Can you handle missing funerals? Lord forbid, right? You have to think about these things before you decide to make these type of moves, right? One thing they aren't lying about, one thing they are not lying about, is they live better than they do in the U.S. They are not lying to you when they say they live better. They live more comfortably, they live safer, they eat better, they sleep better, they get healthier. It's better. The food is different. The food that you're getting in the United States, the food that we were getting in the United States, is completely different. The eggs are different. The milk is different. The chicken is different. The beef is different. It's not all injected with steroids. It's not all, hyped up. If you look at a U.S. chicken wing and a South African chicken, they look different. And it tastes different. And I wouldn't doubt that it's healthier for your body. So I don't want to make this a long rant, but I definitely wanted to come on and just kind of give some perspective on why I chose to make this move outside of my beautiful wife. Personally, why I chose to make this move, how you can make this move, and kind of give some tips and tricks and insight on how to make it as successful as possible. But feel free, if you got questions, if y'all want to know how I did it, if y'all got deeper questions about, the process, and you need a realtor, I think I know somebody you can call. But any way I can help, I'm definitely willing to help, because I think we all deserve it. We work hard in the States, and that is something that, before I go, I want to say this to my South African people. That is something that I wish my South African people would understand about Black Americans. I can't speak for nobody but Black Americans. I wish that my South African family would understand, one, the trauma that Black Americans have been through. The more I'm here, the more I find out, how little they know, how little they were taught about our struggle, right? They know about slavery, they understand, but they don't really understand, you don't really understand the magnitude and the perpetual and collateral damage that caused to us, right? It's hard to understand a people who don't know who we are, right? A people who are searching for love, a people who are searching for family and community, right? Because we've been subjected to so much in the States, right? They don't know much about the Jim Crow era. They don't know much about redlining and segregation. One way I like to compare it, it's like apartheid on steroids. Apartheid times 10. Apartheid for 400 years. Magnitude, right? That can be the experience of a lot of Black Americans. So when you see us here and you hear our accents and you have those flashes that come back to what they showed you on TV, understand that it's completely different. Understand that we aren't what you see on BET. Understand that we are the same. We fight in the same system. We fight in the same war. They told us the same lie that they told you about us. They told us the same lie about you that they told you about us. They treated us the same way they treated you. I'm here, and I see how they treat. I see how they treat South Africans. I see how they treat South African men. I see how they treat South African women, and it's disgusting, right? I see the segregation. I see all of us, and I say us, South Africans, Black people. I see all of us only work in service industry. I see us going through the same struggle. And so that's enough of my little rant. But I just really want my South African family to embrace us because I think we're so much stronger together. I think we have so much relatability. South Africans are exactly like Black Americans. We just speak two languages. If we spoke the same language, you would see how similar we are. Like, we think the same, we move the same, we enjoy fun the same. We legitimately are one people. And so, family, I thank you for joining me on this one. Don't forget, like, subscribe, drop a comment. Let me know what you thought of this content. Let me know if you want to hear more. Let me know if there's questions that you may have or things that you want to know about, places you want to see. And my South Africans, give me some suggestions. Where should we go? What should we see? What should we do? What are we missing out on? What's something about South Africa that we should not miss? All right. And where's the groove? Show me to the groove. I'm trying to find the piano groove. See you next time. Sound bad.